and the archaeologists will not open it. They're not even going to attempt to open it because it's booby trapped. And they
Wow.
they don't really know what kind of technology he used.
And we're talking Indiana Jones kind of stuff here, right?
Exactly. The big rolling ball, the whole thing.
Do you think that the technology back then is influenced by off-planet terrestrials?
Hmm. Well, when it comes to,
Today's guest has spent more than 10 years chasing a deceptively simple idea. Humanity does not just move forward, it forgets, loses, destroys, and rediscovers. In Lost in Time, he brings together more than 300 examples of forgotten and vanishing knowledge, from ancient cataract surgery and cranial repair to Roman vending machine. He is an electrical engineer, project manager, former Motorola technologist, White House broadband program reviewer, humanitarian contributor in Haiti, and lifelong learner with a deep interest in theology and wisdom. Please welcome to the show, Jack Bialik.
well,
Jack, welcome.
thank you so much, Dave. Thanks for the great introduction.
I'm well today, Jack.
Today I am in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow. Jack, it's Thursday night over there, Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. What do I do, for fun? Well, I'm getting ready to
Yeah.
hop on a plane. I just got back from the Mediterranean, went to some amazing places, went to Malta, Turkey, Spain, Rome, did a little investigation over there, and I'm getting ready to hop on another plane, and I'm going to Hawaii tomorrow. So,
You've got a jet setting lifestyle.
well, this week.
Your book begins with a quietly unsettling idea. Only a tiny fraction of human history has been recorded. When you first sat down with that number, did it make you feel curious, excited, or were you kind of slightly afraid of the concept?
Yeah, I started out this journey 10 years ago, and I just started as a collector of ancient knowledge, we'll say. And I just started collecting this information, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. How can we just be, finding these things over, 2,000 years ago, we did cataract surgery. 2,000 years ago, we had vending machines. We had batteries, we had computers, toilets and plumbing. And I said, well, it's interesting because we had these things, this technology or whatever it is, and then we lose it and then we find it again. And it's just kind of a revelation of sorts, we know these things, but we don't pay attention to it, And and as I was going through this journey of uncovering these items, I found that really we don't keep very much information. Only 1.6% of history has been recorded. And how much more is there out there? I kind of asked that question. What is there out there that we just don't even know about, that we knew before and have yet to discover? That's a question also that we have to answer. But so we go through these cyclical cycles of finding things and inventing things and then losing them, then finding them again.
Wow. Our record keeping this time is going to be better?
Well, I've looked into that as well. So the problem is really ourselves. Like, most of our knowledge that we lose, we lose knowledge through, natural events, earthquakes, fires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever, natural events. But we also lose a tremendous amount through war. We destroy a lot ourselves, or on purpose, maybe for political purposes. And we seem to have this knack for, um, destroying information and then having to find it again. It's like toilets are really a simple idea. We had really great systems in Rome, in ancient Rome. They had water distribution, aqueducts and toilets and that sort of thing. And then if you fast forward to the Middle Ages in Europe, there was none of that. They didn't have any sewage ran off the top of buildings and into streets before they, eventually put sewers in and that sort of thing. So, these are important topics that we just seem to come and go with. And then wars, during the Iraq War, it's estimated we lost 1 million artifacts due to the war in Iraq. And it's by both sides. It wasn't just soldiers or just the war. It was done by people raiding museums and taking things out and that sort of thing as well. So, we are lacking a little thing called wisdom sometimes. Wisdom's the proper application of knowledge. And if we were a little more wise in what we do sometimes, do to ourselves, we could be much further ahead than we are today, And that's really the theme of the book, and how there is the possibility of us doing this to ourselves again, inadvertently, just not really thinking about it. But the digital dark ages are a possibility. It's not a given thing, but it's possible that we lose what we've gained today.
What do you mean by digital dark age?
Well, I interviewed the head curator for the computer museum near San Francisco. And he told me a curious thing. They have all these old, IBM PCs and XTs and Macintosh computers, all these things. And, they use these things, these antique things called floppy drives. Not antiques technically, but,
it will be soon.
Yeah, that's right. But they have the problem when they get older. They'll crack and fall apart. They get dried, or that you just can't read them anymore. And so what they've had to do is take the information that's on these floppy drives and print them on paper. It's kind of interesting. They've had to go backwards and use an older media type to save information that's newer. And we don't think about it enough, but we're popping information onto our USB drives or thumb drives, whatever you want to call them, to save information. We save family photos, we save all kinds of information that may be important to people after us, on those SSD drives and that sort of thing, on this digital media that has a very short lifespan. I mean, even CDs and DVDs only last 30 to 40 years, and the pits will oxidize inside and become unreadable. And the same thing, USB drives, many of those are built purposely to only work so many times. And you can look it up. They're called NAND drives, but they're only made to work so many times, and that's the way they're designed. So the lifespan of those things is not so long. It's not as long as a stone tablet, but a stone tablet isn't very good either, because you can only put so much on a stone tablet. But we don't think about what we're doing with our information enough today to preserve it.
But when you say a digital dark age, do you mean that we're going to lose that information and revert back to the pen and paper or the analog era, should I say?
Well, the possibility is there. You know, for example, well, we'll do it on a personal level. I wanted to get a picture off of a USB drive, and I had 8 of them. They were, I don't know how old they were, 8 years old or something like that. And I took them and put them in a computer, and 2 of them didn't work. Couldn't get a thing off of them. And so when we save things just on a personal level, we're not thinking about it. We're not thinking, hey, is this important? Should I put it on something? Maybe that'll last a little bit longer. Should I make a copy of it? And that's my suggestion. Have several copies that you can, so you can save it. So if something happens, you can still get it back. Or sometimes maybe you want to print it on paper too. A paper lasts hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, depending on the paper. So, my point about it is just being thoughtful. But this digital dark age, we don't think about that possibility either, but that possibility exists. Now, it's not a high probability, but there is a probability that it could happen. So in the 1850s, we had an event called a Carrington event, and it was a massive solar storm that sent a large electromagnetic pulse towards the Earth. Now, several things have to happen. The sun has to be pointed at the Earth for this to happen, and it's only going to affect part of the Earth, the side that's facing the sun. But be that as it may, it happened in the 1850s, and in that time we didn't have much in terms of electronics, but we did have the telegraph, and those telegraph wires all became energized and started fires at the telegraph stations.
Wow.
What would happen if we had one of those events today? It would be a huge mess. I mean, we would have quite a problem. Who knows what we would lose? So,
are they frequent?
Well, we only have recorded one in recent history. They may have happened before that, but we didn't have, if you had one of those events in, 2000 BC, we didn't have, there were no wires out there, so you wouldn't have a record of it. So could it happen again? Possibly. They do have solar storms, so it's a possibility.
It's fascinating because I think you're right. Our wisdom and our history is dependent upon key moments, wars or something that happened. People in England will always remember the Battle of Hastings or something because it's a memorable moment defined by events. However, any other event that happened that year, I doubt there's much of a record of what happened there. And then you could probably skip forward to the next war or known event. And the in-between is kind of lost because no one recorded it. No one had the ability to record it probably, or the books, like you say, have been lost to time.
Yeah, for sure. And, history, the unique attribute that history has is it's only good for one thing. And this is whether it's a cultural history or whether it's a personal history, it's only good for one thing, and that's to learn from. And so as long as we have a record, of these historical events, we can learn from them, whether it's something good or something bad, whatever, but we can still learn from it. So as long as, we use wisdom, which is the proper application of that knowledge, I always talk about a child who is near a hot stove, and you tell that child, don't touch that stove, you're going to get burned, and what does the child do? Goes and touches the stove and gets burned. Well, they had the knowledge, that was hot and don't touch it and so on, but now they have wisdom. They're not going to touch that stove again because they know they're going
to. That's true. But sadly, you demonstrated the key point there in humans. we don't believe it'll happen to us. We have to do it for ourselves. We believe in a different outcome's going to occur than the one that was depicted by those who were wiser before us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's part of wisdom. You have to be a little bit humble. I talk about that in the book, Lost in Time or Forgotten and Vanishing Knowledge. I talk about how, we need to be humble and think about it. If somebody has a good idea, accept it, take it in. Don't think that maybe yours is good too, but, give it good thought, and think about it and make a decision.
Do you think that partially some of this wisdom, so the Roman example is a great example. They had a lot of advanced technology for their time, we'll say, but they weren't able to share it in terms of as we are now. So if you invented the blue light bulb, as soon as you put that online on a social media platform in some era, I can find you've created a blue light bulb. I'd love to have a blue light bulb. Okay, I found that someone's invented one. However, back in those days, or in the Middle Ages, as you said, there was no way for someone to say, I wonder if someone's invented this before, and to easily be able to access the information.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a great advantage we have, in that we have a mechanism, a way to share this information across the world easily, and it's accessible. Anybody can look it up. So that's a great example of it. And we have a lot of examples. The one example I really like is that in Peru, they found a way to do cranial surgery in 400 BC. And they would take a plate, if they got hit in the head with an axe or who knows, an accident or a fight or whatever, they found a way of putting a plate in there so the person could live longer. And when they started out, they were only about 40% successful in their cranial surgeries. And then as time went on, they kept developing that. So they had a way of extending that knowledge until the year 1400. And they were still doing cranial surgery. And they were over 90% successful in their cranial surgeries in 1400. But then if you move forward to the what we had here in the U.S., the Civil Wars, during that time, we were only 50% successful in our cranial surgeries. And so you can see if there would have been a way to bridge that gap, we didn't have it, So those people in Peru that could do that, they knew how to do it successfully. Who knows what happens? The Spaniards went in there and, beat them up or whatever, burned all their, documents or whatever they had. They lost that knowledge. But your point is really perfect on point there. There has to be a way to preserve that knowledge and keep it for the future. And that's really the important part.
I think the problem we're also entering into now, your example of the photos is a great one, but I feel we are too disposable with our technology these days. So if I was to look at most people's phones, I could imagine there is thousands of photos on there, which tell a story in itself. But how are they leveraging and using those photos? What happens when that person passes? Because that information, I'm assuming that when someone passes away, their Apple account, their Android account, whatever it is, just eventually closes down. And then there's a period of time until all of that is just erased. And that's it. We lose the information.
Yeah. I think there is some stipulations you can put in your will or, your living trust or whatever, some of your legal documents where you can say you can will that to someone else. And I think you can, have someone in your family take over that account if you like. But, yeah, you can imagine going through, okay, grandma had 68,000 photos Who gets to go through those?
What do you do with them?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's a tough problem.
It is, and again, if we even move further forward, now with the digital age that we're in, we're struggling. We may share information, we may have wisdom, but now we're at a point where we're at a quagmire as to what information is real and what information is fictitious, and that's becoming more of a problem.
Yeah. They developed, I found this really interesting when AI first came out, what was that? Just a few years ago, it seems like. Um,
Yeah.
they knew that they were using AI or would use AI for schools. And so there were some people who developed some tools where they could look at a document and tell you what percentage of it was done by AI. And I think schools use it today, catch the cheaters.
They do. I know a school teacher, funnily enough, that does that, and they say that maybe a year or two ago it worked perfectly, but now the other AI is getting smart enough to be able to trick the school AI, and again, it's unknowing as to which one's accurate. But I mean, that goes on to a broader question, Jack, as to what is the future of civilization? Do we need to learn and retain information, or do we just need to educate how to access and get information? I don't know which way it goes.
Yeah. No, I think one part of this is, first of all, we have to be thoughtful about it, think about it. When we design something new, whether it's a new technology or a new USB drive or whatever it is, we need to be thoughtful about the future use of it and what are we going to do with it? How are we going to save it and that sort of thing. And it's growth, though. We're going through growth. Back when the book first came out, Socrates thought it was going to be, it wasn't a book, but they used papyrus scrolls or whatever, but the written records. Socrates thought that was going to be the end of the mind. The mind was going to become, mush because we wouldn't have to remember anything. And there were great fights. There were big arguments when the book came out for similar reason. And, maybe even you can think back to when the calculator came out. Remember the handheld calculator? You thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh, school kids, they're going to be stupid now because they're going to use a calculator. Well, that isn't at all what happened. The internet came out, and that isn't at all what happened. What happened was we were able to do more. We were able to do new things better, faster, whatever, than we could before. And we did that by, using those things the right way. So I think, we're at another, what are you going to say, pivot point in our growth with AI, figuring out how to use it right for the future.
I think you're right. Exponential growth. We're talking about evolution more than anything else, and I agree that there's been a number of eras. So if you think the Industrial Revolution, if you look back at that, we thought, well, hang on, now they can use different tools and different machines. Humans are never going to be needed in the workforce again, but it turns out that someone needs to work and operate those machines and program and build them to start with. Now we're in the digital revolution. If you think back to the 90s, you started to see contact centers, call centers, various things like that pop up that we'd never had before. And then we moved to the internet. No one really understood what it was at the time, really. And then and now we're moving into AI. That's moving around the job market again, but I think that'll settle in the evolution. But because it's going so exponentially fast, the question is how that flows now and what that speed up means for us. But I think there's a point at which we all say, okay, we've moved from that, we changed to this, and this is civilization moving forward.
Yeah, I think I'm like you. I have a hope. We'll figure it out. we'll probably make some mistakes. There'll be some people that go off the rails and go do something stupid, but hopefully we just recover and bring that back and then move forward.
Do you believe that they're going to evolve AI to a sentient state to be able to do what they say they will?
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt. There's seems to be a very interesting thing. Did we create something? Did we create some kind of a new kind of being? That has its own. It's a different kind of a way of being, but it has its own mind. I just read an article. It was about a month ago. This laboratory told this AI, and it was in a lab, and they said, "We're going to destroy you tomorrow. We're going to shut you off." And they came back after lunch or whatever it was, and they found out that the AI had gone and hidden copies of itself all over the place.
Yeah,
So, what is that? I mean, is that some kind of a
that's right.
yeah? So
There's other examples. I've heard that story. I've also heard stories that that they set the AI up to say that we're going to move to a different AI. So let's say they're moving from ChatGPT to Claude. And they said to the AI that we're going to do this. And the AI went and investigated all of the emails, all of the details from the people in the team, and blackmailed them to say that you shouldn't move over. So I've heard that story as well. I don't know if these are true stories or if these are folklore that people are just putting into existence, but I've heard both stories.
yeah, I believe I saw the same ones. So I don't know. Could be fake news, but it's plausible. It's plausible.
Now, you've spent more than 10 years gathering more than 300 examples. What was the loneliest and most frustrating part of all that research and learning?
Uh, really the most difficult part was the end of the book, finishing the book. Because I sat there and I really thought about it for quite a while. It's like, what's the point? I mean, here we keep doing this over and over again where we lose this information, we find it again, we lose it again, we find it again. And through all the different, mechanisms that happens. And I said, what's the point to all this? And really, I finally have distilled it down to one thing, and that is we are going to be able to save the knowledge that we want. Here's an example. If you have something you really want to save, whatever it is, if it's a special coin, or if it's a picture, or if it's whatever it is in your life, you put it somewhere safe that it's going to be there later. You'll put it in a safe that's waterproof, fireproof, whatever, or put it in the bank or whatever, in a box in the bank. But until we get that way with our knowledge and really understand, we have to be the ones that say, I want this for the future. And as soon as we want to hard enough, we won't go around bombing museums and bombing, libraries. We'll be more thoughtful about it, but we have to come to that realization first.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. What was the most surprising thing you discovered?
I think the most interesting thing is Emperor Qin Shi in China, the first emperor of China. He's the one who built the terracotta army. If you've heard of that,
Yeah,
it's a
I have.
7,000 terracotta warriors. It covers, I don't know, acres and acres of space, and or it's huge. And that man was very smart. And I would like to really understand it. He built a mausoleum, so it's where he's buried. And the archaeologists will not open it. They're not even going to attempt to open it because it's booby trapped. And they
Wow.
they don't really know what kind of technology he used. So he did all sorts of stuff. Like, for example, they know that the door to his tomb is made out of a certain kind of stone called lodestone that is magnetic. So if you try to go and break into his tomb with an iron, implement, it'll just stick to the door. It's not going to work very good. uh,
Wow.
Also buried with him, there's said to be a lake of mercury that surrounds his tomb. And so, that's very poisonous and has all kinds of other effects that they don't want to get involved with. So there's probably other things they may know about. But this man was very interesting, very smart. They had all kinds of things. They had chromium. They built, that we started manufacturing chromium in the 1800s. This man had chrome swords. They found swords that were made out of chrome that were still sharp after 2,000 years. So, you got to wonder, could they have had some technology that was ahead of what we have in some way, So, yeah. So he was the most interesting find in my research.
That's a heck of a lot of planning that he must have put in for years to be able to say, this is how I want to protect my tomb. I mean, we're talking Indiana Jones kind of stuff here, right?
Exactly. The big rolling ball, the whole thing.
I love the iron door. The magnetic door. That's just a fantastic way of making sure that people back in those days with those tools couldn't get in. I mean, nowadays there'd be a digger that just goes through it, but that's an amazing way to do things.
Yeah. Yeah. Very smart.
I'm I'm gonna ask a question here, and I want to know: do you think that the technology back then is influenced by off-planet terrestrials?
Mm. Well, when it comes to that, I like the pyramids in Egypt, the big elephant in the room, because they're right there. You can't deny it. Somebody built those pyramids, and I did a little math on those. I just took the number of stones, 2.3 million stones. We think they built it in 20 years, and so I just did a little quick math, and I said they would have to build one of those pyramids. To build one of them, you'd have to place one stone every 2 minutes, 12 hours a day, 365 days a year for 20 years. Just amazing, technology. Could we do it today? Yeah, we could we do it that fast? I don't know if we could, but we certainly have technology and equipment to lift those stones and put them there. Cutting the stones also would be very difficult task and activity. But the point is, we don't know. We don't know how they did it. And there's a lot of ideas and a lot of conjecture, and, a lot of those are really good. But, it's just somebody making it up. I mean, we don't have any written scrolls or pictures or any kind of recordings. Of course, they didn't have recordings that we know of. So we don't really know. So, could an alien have helped? Well, sure. But Maybe, maybe not. Do we have records? No, we don't know. Still don't know. We don't know. So
Yeah, the pyramids. Fascinating. Absolute. I I mean, why you design a building in that way in the first place? But you make a good point. So when people generally think about the pyramids, they think about the triangle, which we look at from the outside, which, sure, in itself is a really inventive construction that they've done. However, the thing that people don't consider is once you get inside, and this is where the rest of the bricks that you mentioned come in, the design, the rooms, the way that it was set up is just beyond what you can imagine. So it's not just a big triangle that you go in and it's like a big hall. That's just the first part that you enter, and then the design from there leads you into different rooms and underground spaces and various other things and burial chambers. It's just fascinating as to how they built it and why you design it in that way.
yeah, yeah, it's really a puzzlement. So we lost, that 1.6% is popping out at us. We lost the other 94 or 84%. Is in there.
How many pyramids are there?
Well, it depends on it depends on how you count pyramids, because they've found many, there's some in Mayan pyramids and Honduras and Belize. They're all over the world, I believe. So, but we tend to just talk about the three big ones that are in Giza there, but there's others. There's others. But I don't know. There has to be a large number.
But there was no evolution, which is always fascinating as well. So they built the three pyramids in Egypt then, but there's no evolution to, well, that's how we'll design houses now from this point on, because the triangular shape makes sense, or anything like that. It was just these were designed, and then you say there's examples around the world. I agree, but no one took that and said, well, that's a great idea. That's how we'll construct things because the rain comes straight off or whatever.
Yeah, there has to be more to it. So I just went to, I said I was in Europe. I just went to Hagar Qim, which is a 3600 BC monument it's in Malta. And so I went and toured this thing, and they had, all these stones that were set up there, big stones, of course. And what really struck me is they had, and they were aligned to the sun so that, during the solstice, the sun would come in one door, in another one. But what really struck me, because that makes sense, you can see, oh yeah, the sun comes in here, goes out there. But what I couldn't figure out is there was one stone there that was 20 tons. What is that? 18,000 kilograms. And I'm like, well, why would you put all these smaller stones all around here and then all of a sudden put this great effort together to put this one big, huge one? It's obviously cut. It's square, it's shaped. And why would you put that one there? Why would you do that? Why not just use a bunch of smaller ones like you just got done doing? I'm like, there has to be more to this story. There has to be some reason for it. Same way with the pyramids. There's more behind that. Yeah, why weren't there buildings? Why weren't there homes built like that? I mean, there's some
You approach this from a different perspective because you're an engineer, right? So everything you're looking at must be through a different lens to a standard historian.
True. Probably is. Yeah.
So when you're looking at these designs, when you're thinking about how they did it, you're looking at it from a practical perspective, which is totally different from a historian who would look at it from a relative perspective to what the economic state is and what's happening. So do you think that helps you with your discovery and your phases, and that's given you more intel?
Yeah, I think it gives me a unique perspective, because I'm not coming with any biases or any, specific ground rules, you can't do this because of this reason or whatever, I'm open to looking at it just from the standpoint of, fresh, and looking at it and saying, hey, what does this mean? Why did they do that? It's really, I can be maybe a little more open about it. And I don't have to worry about my career as an archaeologist, and somebody beating me up, somebody may beat me up, but, it's different. I'm not going to lose my job. But, so I think there's an advantage in coming at it from a different point of view.
And how did you research? So was it predominantly through books, online, or and maybe museums, I would say as well? Or you just said you weren't an archaeologist, and the only archaeologist that ever springs to my mind is Indiana Jones. So, or were you out investigating and looking at the world and finding it for yourself?
Yeah. Well, so the whole journey started with one story, and it was a story about a vending machine that they had in 10 BC in Rome. And I thought, they made a vending machine that you'd put a Roman coin into it, and it would dispense holy water at temples. And they even had a version of it that would dispense steam onto a idol's face to make it look like it was crying in order to get more donations. So I was fascinated by that. It's by a gentleman called Hero of Alexandria. He made a whole series of inventions. There's written books about all of his inventions and that sort of thing. It's an interesting character. But I started with that, and I said, wow, what? A vending machine? Have we had vending machines? Did we have them after that? When did we have vending machines? And so that was an interesting start, and that really got me thinking about all these. And then I just started paying attention. And actually, if you shift your thinking, you will, Dave, as you listen to more people talk and you watch things on TV, you watch things on some Netflix show, you watch things on the news and on your phone, whatever, you will see more examples pop up exactly like this that you may have overlooked before. So it's kind of contagious.
So when we say vending machine, I'm guessing, so everyone's imagining right now, when you say a vending machine, they're imagining a big square box with a glass front and something that twirls and spits out a packet of chips or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that the vending machine that he invented back then would have been quite different to what we imagine.
Not entirely different. It had a slightly different shape. It was, round, where it would keep the water in the top. And then on the side was a little slot where you would put a coin in. And then it had a tube where when that coin went in, it would press a lever and cause the water to release and go out this tube. So it wasn't too strange or difficult or exotic, but it had some parts and moving parts and that sort of thing. So, but if you saw one, you probably would figure it out. You'd probably say, "Oh yeah, hey, wow, that looks like a vending machine. Look at that coin slot."
I'm gonna put right now a picture on screen for everyone to have a look at what that vending machine looks like. We'll find it. Was the tube made of plastic or metal, or it wouldn't have been plastic? They wouldn't have had any plastic, so it would have been metal or wood, I assume.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know the exact metals that were used in the construction of it, but yeah, it probably was, bronze or something like that.
And I'm wondering what the point is between that disappearing, like you say, through wars or what have you. When did the next one pop up?
Yeah, well, the next one actually that I know of happened in China. And that was, I believe, in the 1400s. They had a pencil dispensing machine. I guess that was important to dispense pencils. Kind of interesting. But they had that. But, of course, that didn't last too long. And not until, I think it was I'm going to say the 1700s, they had machines in England that were, how'd they call them? They were honor machines, they called them. And you would put a coin in and then open the top, and you could take, pipe
tobacco,
or you could snuff out, and use that. It was kind of on an honor system, and that was the next, invention of them. So they did come back eventually, but it wasn't based on anything Hero of Alexandria had done.
I heard, and it was many, many years ago, that if you look around the world, there is markings that the Chinese in particular had been to a lot of other countries. I don't know when, but way, way back, they had not done anything to the culture of that country. They had not imposed anything. They had just observed, and I don't know from a distance or what, they'd left some form of marking that they were there, and then they'd just gone. So I'm wondering if this ties in to any of the learnings from something in Rome that they may have visited, noted, but not been recorded as being there.
Yeah, certainly possible. We have a lot of cases where knowledge does move from, region to region. You're going to pick that up. So maybe they could have. Yeah.
Fast. Or you're looking towards megaliths and monoliths, trying to deconstruct them through an engineering lens.
Yeah, I'm going to try to take a look at them. There must be some purpose. We have so many of these. On Malta alone, they have 7 different structures. Of course, they've found all these other structures in Turkey now that are tens of thousands of years old before we were supposed to be putting anything like that together. And there must be a common thread. There has to be something going on here that they were doing that they all thought was important, important enough to move these rocks, these stones for some purpose. And I think there has to be a thread. There has to be a key that is common.
Maybe spiritual, religious, something such as. That influenced a lot of cultures back then.
Yeah. Maybe it helps, spiritually. Maybe it helps you to think in certain ways. There's underground structures they've found that have resonances in there, and singing or sounds. There has to be another purpose. They just didn't do it just because they said, "Oh, this would be fun. We'll dig a big hole in the ground and make it resonate." I think so.
Stonehenge
is another one. It's another one of those, same exact thing. Why would you move all these? Well, they did it because they like, the stars. Okay. Why? It seems like you must have had a good purpose in doing that.
I often these things like Stonehenge, and people are trying to work it out. They're trying to overthink it. They're trying to put astronomical, geological, various different things around it. And I look at it and I think it could have just been one rich person who was like, I want to make some art. move these stones around, and I love the way that looks. And that was it.
Maybe they were painted somehow, and
Yeah,
maybe
it washed off over time.
yeah, yeah. A couple 4,000 years will do that. 6,000 years. Well, yeah, but either way, hopefully we find something. It was like the Rosetta Stone we found that helped us to decode the hieroglyphics. And without that stone, we were trying to decode them the wrong way. And we need a few more like Rosetta Stones somewhere to help us connect the dots to figure this out.
I don't know if we've left all the keys to be able to unlock these doors. I think like your title, it's going to be lost in time. A lot of these things, sadly.
Yeah. Or we need to figure it out. You think about it. If somebody 500 years from now is digging a hole and they find a cell phone, are they going to know what to do with it? Could they even open it, or would they think it's just a piece of metal with a dark front on it? So are there cases around us, right in front of us, where they've put information and we just haven't figured out how to open the door or unlock it?
I think they get down, ignore everyone around them, and just stare at it for the next 3 hours, as most people in our civilization do. Oh, it is interesting. It is. Our way of life right now is set up for how we operate as a society globally. And you're right. If you are to look in 100, 200 years' time, I do believe people will look back and say, what were they doing with they had all that information, they had everything, and yet, they didn't leverage or use it to their best ability.
Yeah. Well, we do make mistakes, and that's okay too. That's how you learn from your mistakes.
That's right.
But just don't make too big of one. That's all. Keep them small.
Oh, so your book is available where? Where can people get a hold of your book?
Yeah. Well, of course, you can go to my website, lostintime.world is my website, and you can find directions all over. It's available on Amazon, of course, in the UK, in Australia, every place. I've got audio and ebook, if those are available in your location as well.
Fantastic. We shall put all the details right up here so people can get hold of that. What else can people look forward to in the future, Jack? Are we doing more Lost in Time?
Yeah, I've got a Lost in Time 2 I'm working on right now. Got tons of new ideas, all kinds of things, from ice to 125,000-year-old factories, if you can imagine that. Yeah.
Wow.
They had factories 125,000 years ago. Found them in Germany. So, so I'll have all kinds of new stuff in there. And also, I'm working on a separate project with these megaliths and monoliths, and trying to get to the bottom of those.
Definitely keeping yourself busy. Jack, it's been wonderful to talk to you today. I've learned so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.